Viewers, welcome to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything current in the law of personal injuries today. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm a personal injury lawyer of over 25 years' experience. With me tonight, I've got John Karantzis, a partner in the law firm. Good evening, John.
Hi, Tony. Hi, viewers.
And Don Maffia, a partner in the law firm. Good evening, Don.
Good evening, Tony. Good evening, viewers.
Viewers, tonight we're going to be talking about the plight of asylum seekers, what it's going to cost the Australian community in terms of dollars, and also perhaps a breach of humanitarian rights. So viewers, stay tuned because we've got a riveting episode for you.
However, Tony, what's in the news?
John, Don, there's a lot of interesting stories, but this one of an arrested student abandoned in a cell and getting a $4.5 million award, Don. That sounds pretty big.
I should say this is in America. So I believe this student was going to a mate's house to smoke some marijuana, and in the meantime the DEA came and arrested them all and put him in a cell and forgot about him and found him 5 days, John, after.
So they left him in a cell for 5 days, Tony.
No food.
It's a big settlement, John.
He drank his own urine to survive. He was hallucinating. They forgot about him for 5 days.
Can you not survive for that length of time?
Basically, no.
No?
And it's very hard. That's why he had to drink his own urine. He was hallucinating. And by the way, this $4.5 million award is just a payout. He hasn't even sued yet.
So what is it, like a...
Just an ex gratia government payment, yes.
How long can you stay without water? I'm not even certain of that.
2-3 days, Tony.
Really?
Yeah.
So he's lucky to be alive.
Exactly.
So when you look at the dollar signs as compared to what could have been, it does equate to a fair settlement.
Oh, it does. And it's just an example of, you know, bureaucracy gone mad.
And how do you forget him? Is that... Well, could you say it's deliberate, Don?
Well, you don't know. Well, I mean, apparently he was calling out and everything. I just forgot about him. And it sounds like no one went into that room for at least 5 days. But when they found him, he actually has kidney failure, the whole lot. He ended up in hospital.
Yeah, of
course. Did. Oh, he's on the way out. And but yeah, as we should say again, it is in America, so it's a huge settlement, $4.5 million, which is not even the settlement. This is like John said, extra gratia payment before he starts the legal proceedings.
Maybe they left him there because he was out. I mean, he'd been smoking quite a bit of marijuana.
Well, you know, this goes into the only in America file, doesn't it, Tony?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Anyway, look, we're grateful that he survived. I mean, let's move on. There's a star who's suing a TV show. Neighbour star Kim Valentine got the all clear from doctors to return to work after a 2-month stay in a private clinic for severe depression in 2011, and then she was given a boot. John, general protections?
Yes, the Fair Work Act, a Commonwealth Government Act, Tony. I think she may have a very good claim, Tony.
And so discrimination there, John? Don?
Yeah, look, sounds like it. And if people who watch Neighbours, Kim Valentine was Libby Tanner. She's she's been there for a while.
She was a star.
She was a star. And also breach of contract, Tony.
It's a classic case of the employees saying, please, I'm ready to go back to work. And unfortunately, the work isn't there.
And there's been a few cases, John, if you recall, against Neighbours where a few of their stars have been let go in similar circumstances.
Exactly, yeah.
So, look, sounds like...
it'll be interesting to see what pans out in this case. Just like in, Tony, the Mel Gregg case. We haven't heard anything for a few weeks now, Tony.
But she had two years to run on her contract, so she could obviously sue for breach of contract.
Exactly.
And you say in addition to that, John, general protections. Is that correct?
Yes, under the guise of discrimination.
Yeah. So it really depends on, did they want to kill her character off? Is that what it is?
Oh, I think a character moved away from Ramsey Street a long time ago, Tony.
It is a funny story, isn't it?
Relocated, John, maybe.
Look, I don't watch the show. I don't know how popular she is.
Let's hope she wasn't relocated to the PNG, Tony. But we'll talk about that later on.
And look, the article didn't go into that much detail. I mean, discrimination as to disability in terms of that she had that breakdown, she ended up in hospital, but she was cleared to go back to work.
At the very least, she'll probably win her breach of contract, won't she?
Exactly.
Well, exactly.
Interesting case. We'll keep you updated on that story in the future, viewers. What about this Mercy blame that mum sues for baby death? Don?
This is unfortunately, we hear it time and time again, John and Tony. This is where a mother who's pregnant goes to the hospital, complains of abdomen pains and cramps and the whole lot, and then told, no, go home, you're fine. In this case, the hospital actually didn't even do an internal examination or examination. So they just said, you're right to go home. And of course, unfortunately, she goes home, and then later on, she has a stillborn baby. So it appears like if they did the proper examinations, they would have picked up that there was something quite...
So there's issues of either, malpractice, as in not enough work was done by the doctors, or, Tony, is this another classic case of literally there's not enough resources being given to the hospitals?
I think it's a lack of resources, John.
Yeah.
I mean, I recall
It's a theme that we come up with time and time again, isn't it, Tony?
Oh, it is. But in fact, can I say this? I went to a very eminent Melbourne private hospital and had an MRI scan, and they said there was no one to interpret the scan.
Gee.
Which is bizarre, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
But look, in my view, if you're saying it's a lack of resources, an examination can be done by the registrar. They should have picked this up. So even if they had the extra resources, would it have changed the outcome? I don't think it would have.
Yeah,
I think this is more inherent than that. I think this is where the training of the staff, right, goes to show that if you're faced with this situation, one little examination that could have happened, that they could have done, would have solved this whole problem.
I don't want to have a crack at the registrars, but are they qualified enough to be able to pick up these sort of issues?
Oh, look, there are qualified medical practitioners. It just depends on whether or not they're surgeons, which usually they're not. But Tony, it's a case-by-case basis.
But then again, if they're not qualified, then refer it off to paediatrician, refer it to obstetrician.
Exactly.
So there is so many resources there. But then again, Tony, there is plenty of paediatricians, obstetricians out there that could have been called on call. So look, I think it's a bit of both, lack of resource training. At the end of the day, for the poor mother, the result has been that she's had a stillborn baby and she's had the psychiatric effect.
Look, we're going to do it on another episode because it's a big issue, this lack of resources, I think. Here we go again. We've had 2 dog attacks and a toddler's been mauled to death by a prized family pet. Now, this dog apparently had won medals and... the child was attacked. The grandmother tried to get the dog off the child. The mother intervened. Once the dog was taken off the child...
Too late.
Went to hospital and the child passed
child
away.
has died, Tony. Tony, just, again, these specific breeds, I'm sorry, they can't be out in the general public. It's just too dangerous.
It was a family pet, John.
Family pet that turned on a family member and with fatal consequences. It's just not worth it, Tony. It's just not worth it.
Don, to be a prized dog, it means that it would have been educated, trained, and what happens is it just went crazy. I just don't understand.
Well, we're talking about the inherent nature of these animals.
Okay.
Yep.
You can't train out the inherent nature of these
I'm going to save these articles because we'll get Moira Rayner back on the show.
Yes.
Yep.
And we'll really have a nice crack at this one. Viewers, we've got to go to a sponsors break. Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to be talking about this very delicate topic of asylum seekers. Viewers, welcome back to the show. Tonight's topic is a very hot topic of the plight of our asylum seekers. Now, the various governments have changed their rules, regulations and how they're going to deal with this issue on many, many occasions over the last few years. But up until now, there's been no proper solution, and there's been a lot of these detainees and asylum seekers injured in detention, workers being injured in detention, and we've got boats that are still coming, people drowning on the way over. It's an absolute debacle. John, what is an asylum seeker in simple language?
Oh, Tony, it's someone that is literally fleeing their country for all sorts of reasons. It could be religious persecution, political persecution, and unfortunately, even economic freedom, as in they want a better life.
Exactly. And Don, we have got an obligation under international law to take on X number of asylum seekers, refugees every year, haven't we?
Well, we're signatories to the 1951 Convention for the Status of Refugees. So back then, which I believe the convention was introduced in relation to the whole European countries, and then got extended out to the outer countries like Australia. But it's really how to deal with refugees and how to process the refugees and pretty much give them a fair assessment when they come here claiming asylum. And just on the point, it's like John said, there are people who are persecuted for maybe sexuality reasons, religious reasons and all those things. So they come to Australia and they expect to be processed in a fair way and have their story heard and determined whether or not they're a true status of refugee and should be seeking asylum here.
Can I talk about the current articles that I've been seeing in every paper? The articles are pretty clear and, you know, they're blatant as well. Don't come here because you're not going to settle in Australia. What's your take on this, John?
Well, Tony, Kevin Rudd has changed political tact. The election's been called, and just before that, he's brought in this new foreign policy. Any asylum seeker that jumps the queue, that comes here by the boat, well, they will not be allowed to live in Australia. They have to be resettled in Papua New Guinea.
Isn't he taking a big, bold chance that the public will side with him on this issue?
Well, his policy is almost akin to the Howard policy of 10 years ago, Tony, isn't it?
It is.
It's the new White Australia policy, isn't it, Tony?
It is. And Don, just on that issue, they're going to send them off to Papua New Guinea, right? And they're going to be housing them in tents, right? And I don't think Papua New Guinea is the best place in the world to be for the simple fact that there's no work. Well, it's not exactly the most sophisticated or economically advanced place in the world, is it, John?
The headline says it all, Tony. The island from hell.
And Tony, this policy, so the policy is you come to Australia by boat. It doesn't include people who somehow get past all the customs without a visa and come to Australia and stay at the airport and can't get into Australia and they claim asylum. This only covers people who come by boat.
And jumps the queue.
Well, but John, isn't it those people who come to Australia on a, let's say, temporary visa and then overstay their visa, aren't they jumping the queue as well? Why aren't they sent to Papua New Guinea?
Technically, they'll be deported.
Well, not according to this policy. This policy is only by people by boat.
Just on this issue, they're going to allocate $1 billion towards trying to get everyone over to Papua New Guinea. How many are there per year? How many people?
Thousands. It's thousands.
It's about 5,000 or 6,000, I think.
It's thousands.
I think the numbers are increasing. I think the numbers started around like last year was 2,000 a month.
I know
they've increased, and it's going to be a big number. This year there'll be, I think they're trying to estimate could be over 20,000, 30,000 boat people.
Couldn't you resettle 20,000 people with $1 billion in even remoter areas of Australia where, you know, they're underutilised and undercultivated? I mean, I'm pretty sure that some of these people that are coming from Afghanistan, Iraq, would be happy to settle in remoter areas, albeit, you know, not barren.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, they've got skills to provide to Australia. Australia needs them. But unfortunately, Tony, this is a political hot topic, isn't it?
So you're, in effect, we're saying, John, you're saying that us as a nation are racist.
Well, it's, unfortunately, we've got this new White Australia policy, which harks back to the Howard days, the Howard government days, And unfortunately, Tony, it's a political winner.
Do you believe it's a political winner, Don?
Look, for me, I mean, my view is I don't think this is the solution to the problem. Is it a problem? Look, I think it is. There is boats coming here and people drowning.
We don't want that.
In terms of sheer number, and look, it is in terms of every country in the world has a right to protect their borders. And these people are, like John said, jumping the queue, getting into our country.
Yeah, but we've also got a humanitarian obligation to take on X amount of asylum seekers, refugees every year. We've signed up to the convention.
Exactly.
And then if we look at the number of refugee asylums over the year that we take, and then compare it to the number of boat people that come in by boat. So the other ones come other means, okay? Plane or whatnots. But then you have these people by boat. If you look at the sheer numbers, the boat people only represent 3 or 4% of the number of asylum seekers that we take in. So those figures are very small compared to the bigger picture, if you like. So the problem is these boat people. Is it a political view? Is it a political gain? To me, it appears so, because it's not the solution to it. We still will have boat people coming in.
Look, we'll have it. However, and the Australian public is really dead against these people smugglers. They're making money off the lives of these people, and that's one thing the Australian public won't put up with.
John, those articles are targeted at people smugglers, but the people that have been affected are the people that are getting smuggled. That's the reality of it.
That's the reality, and they're literally, now their life is going to be resettled in Papua New Guinea. They've intended to come to Australia for a better life.
But John, just on that issue, they're not going to be resettled. They're only going to get temporary visas over there. They're not going to have permanent residency. That's what my understanding.
I think in terms of, they're talking about Nauru. I think Kevin Rudd came out saying that there's going to be another solution from Nauru, do the similar thing as in Papua New Guinea, Nauru. And I think they're saying they'll resettle Nauru, but the Nauru government's saying, well, they're saying, no, it's only going to be temporary. So they can't even, between themselves, agree on what's going to happen. At the end of the day, it doesn't help the asylum seekers.
We've got to be in breach of some sort of international convention or law to be settling people in places that are so remote. They've got high unemployment, no resources, no infrastructure. I mean, they're going to places that are worse off than where they're leaving, if you ask me.
Well, they'll be literally resettled in a tent city, Tony.
Well, if you look at the convention articles, this is the one that we've signed to. We're signatories to this convention. It prohibits from penalising people seeking asylum who arrive without a visa. Okay. We're doing that. We're sending people by boat off to Papua New Guinea. And it goes on. You cannot penalise people seeking asylum based on their method of arrival. Okay. We've done that. So we're in contravention, could be in contravention of this convention, but who enforces it?
Viewers, we've got to go to a sponsors break, but please stay tuned, because after the break, we're going to be talking about what the cost is to our community of asylum seekers in detention because of the policies implemented by the current government. Viewers, welcome back to the show. We're analysing and scrutinising the role of the Australian government in dealing with asylum seekers. Now, what the public should know is that in the last 12 months, we've outlaid $25 million in compensation and or ex gratia payments to all these detainees. Now, those payments have been made to young children that have witnessed acts of violence or sexual acts in the detention centres. They're for physical assaults. They're for a range of things. Also, not to mention the workers that have to deal with these asylum seekers who, because they can't see any light at the end of a tunnel, are rioting. And so we've got a situation where the workers are put at risk and there's a breach of duty of care on the part of the employer because they're not working under a safe workplace, are they, John?
Exactly, Tony. It comes back to basic common law principles. The Commonwealth has detained these asylum seekers in institutions whereby there's absolutely no hope for them. They've got no hope. of course, what will happen? A psychological claim will arise.
Of course.
They're suffering from stress, anxiety and depression.
Well, just on that issue there, I want to talk about this case of Beirut, John,
Yes.
the Secretary and Department of Immigration and Multicultural Indigenous Affairs, 2004 case. Don, can you give us the facts of that?
That was where an asylum seeker was put into detention centre, and whilst he's there, he developed a psychiatric disorder condition from being in detention, but also witnessing these assaults, self-harm, all these type of things. And it was held, the court considered, and claim was brought as to whether or not a person should be protected by, or is there a duty owed by the Commonwealth Government to this person held in detention to look after their safety. And the result was, of course it is.
Well,
they put them there, so they should be looking after their safety.
John, the High Court held that the Commonwealth's got a non-delegable duty of care to protect the detainees. What's that mean, John?
Exactly. That means the Commonwealth, Tony, can't shift the onus to another party, as in the party that's running, the organisation that's running the camp, the detention centre.
Like GS4 and companies like that.
Exactly. The Commonwealth is responsible. They've put the asylum seeker in this detention centre. They are responsible for his well-being and his care. And they have the duty of care. Now, at the same time, the party, the organisation that's running the detention centre, they also will have a responsibility, won't they, Tony?
Of course, yeah, they have. So you end up suing them both.
Exactly.
So the Commonwealth Government cannot pass the buck.
No, not
Ultimately,
at all.
it stops with them. They're responsible. They put them in
Exactly.
there. They are responsible.
Exactly. Shaden Baydar is a very interesting case. This 11-year-old former refugee sought damages for negligent infliction of psychiatric injury as a consequence of conditions experienced in Australian immigration detention centres. That's in Wimmera and Villawood detention centres in 2001.
Yes.
What are the facts of this case, John?
Tony, again, we've got this young kid. He's been placed in detention. He's witnessed all sorts of things that you and I wouldn't be able to comprehend. And we're talking about a little kid that's witnessed this.
Yeah, he's witnessed acts of violence, self-harm, mass hunger strikes, riots and suicide attempts.
He suffered a severe nervous shock reaction to all these events.
Well,
and
the kid's pretty much in jail. The
Yeah.
kid is in jail, 11 years old, in jail.
Exactly.
But you know what's really astounding about all this? The government defended every issue.
Nice.
They took issue with whether there was a duty of care.
Yes.
They fought the issue of causation. They fought the issue of damage and quantum. They disputed every point.
Exactly.
But having said that, what did he get, Don?
I think the judgment was 400,000 plus.
Yep.
So it was a huge judgment. And I think the importance about this case is you've got the government just cannot say, okay, well, you're in detention, you're here as an illegal immigrant, we don't owe you anything, which is entirely wrong.
It serves as a classic precedent that the Commonwealth Government and any organisation that jails people in this type of manner, they're liable for damages suffered by the detainee.
And they're coming here, they're asylum seekers. They're already in a vulnerable
Traumatised
state.
and-
From
Yeah.
their own country.
They're looking for help, Tony. And what does the Australian government do? Makes it worse.
They put them in
They
detention
might-
centres.
If they could be thinking back and saying we should have stayed where we were.
Exactly.
Well, that's
Yeah.
right. And look, I mean, these
exactly.
people are taking the risk of going by a boat, which usually these boats should only be holding 30 to 40, then
And they got over
unseaworthy.
hundreds.
They've got over 100. They've got the risk of dying. And I guess for them, it's a lesser of two evils. Stay at home, be persecuted, or try for better freedom and all those
And the
things.
worst
And then
part-
end up in jail here.
And also a lot of them wouldn't speak English too, would they?
No.
So there'd be communication problems.
Barely. And then we've got, as you alluded to earlier, Tony, the security guards guarding these detainees. Now, they have to witness horrific events such as, riots and rape between asylum seekers. Now, they suffer from harm also, don't they, Tony?
Well, acts of desperation, if you've been an asylum seeker in one of these detention centres for 5 years, it could make you do anything. You could become violent, couldn't you?
Exactly.
And you could take it out on the guards.
Unfortunately, it does occur.
I mean, they've set fire to a lot of these centres, haven't they?
Oh, exactly,
Yes,
yes.
yeah. There's acts of grace payments, right? The legislation does entitle the government to give these grace payments out. Has that happened, though?
Look, we don't know. I think, well, it wouldn't be in place unless it's happened. I think it's could be used as hush money. Just keep them quiet.
Our understanding is it has occurred, and we're talking large sums of money, aren't we, Tony? We're talking 500 grand plus.
It's to keep people quiet, really.
Exactly.
Can I just say this, because the show's moving pretty quick? Is there a non-delegable duty of care on the Commonwealth once the asylum seekers are shipped off to Papua New Guinea? Don?
Look, I think there's a very grey area and still to be tested, because the law in Australia says that the law of where the tort occurred is a law that applies. So if the law is in Papua New Guinea law applies. So I'm not well versed on what it is.
At the same time,
they could get away with saying, well, that's the law that applies, and it depends on what it provides.
At the same time, Don, if the Commonwealth has jurisdiction at Manus Island, then our Commonwealth laws applies and extends to
I think it's something that apply some contract law as well. They come here, the government's contracted out their responsibilities to Papua New Guinea.
Exactly.
Right,
Yep.
for a price.
Yes.
And based on that, why can't you sue the Commonwealth? Look, I'd take this case on. Look,
Yes.
And Don, anything you want to add?
Well, look, this is unfortunately there's no solution with these people. I mean, I spoke to someone who works at a refugee centre helping people come to Australia, bring their family, and one solution he said is, you got these illegal smugglers getting money by these asylum seekers. Why doesn't the Australian government say, instead of paying these illegal smugglers, pay us, we'll bring you over, we'll hear your case.
Yep.
If you're a true asylum seeker, we'll keep you. If not, we'll fly you back.
That's it.
It'll be much cheaper.
That sounds too logical.
Yeah.
It does. And look, I'm sure there's other ramifications from it. But everyone's got a view about this, John. And I think the point is there's not a solution. All right, so we'll just see what happens.
Viewers, what's been going on has created an opening for people like Julian Assange to set up his party. He's taken the asylum seeker issue pretty big, and I think it might help him get a position on the Senate. But as this is such a hot topic, please give us your Twitter and Facebook comments. Go to YouTube for our past episodes. Stay tuned for future episodes. Thanks for watching, and always remember to stay safe.